It's interesting as I have been in this industry and looking at economics and looking at people's finances for the past 20 years, that every once in a while, a new buzzword or buzz term comes out. And the new term that's coming out now is what's called inflation spiral. So you're probably going to hear about this new thing called inflation spiral. Maybe it's not new to those that have been around longer than I have, but it's new to me. So what is inflation spiral? It's really interesting. And I pay a lot of attention to the word inflation in general. I think it's the most interesting topic and most impactful topic that we all need to know about when we think about money. So inflation spiral, when you think of something spiraling out of control, normally you picture it kind of going down the toilet, right? It's going down the drain. It's a spiral that feeds on itself. And this inflation spiral is the opposite. It's a spiral that's going up. So it's a spiral of increasing inflation. And let's take a look at the last few years to kind of give you an example. So COVID hits. The economy comes to a violent, screeching halt. The government basically sees a cardiac arrest in the US economy and pulls out the paddles, puts it on and just shocks our economy with trillions and trillions of dollars. $1 trillion is just more money than any of us could possibly fathom. So trillions of dollars get pumped out into the economy. So that creates inflation, right? So we see inflation all around us. So the money is just pouring out. I mean, it seemed like I was looking around and it looked like people had more money than they've ever had. I don't know how this was working out, but the money was permeating into the economy, which they wanted. And it ultimately created the beginnings of mass inflation, housing being the most evident, rents and home prices. So you have inflation going on. Now, the people who had been working, a lot of people got laid off. A lot of people were working from home kind of on a temporary basis. And all of a sudden now it's like, okay, the world is opening back up. Everyone needs to come back to work. The stimulus checks are starting to stop, so all this is coming back into play. And it was almost like there was some sort of social media discussion, because it seems like in general, the people that I talk to that are more on the entry level income scale seem to feel like if it's not $20 an hour, I'm just not going to work. Like I don't get out of bed for that much, right? So all of a sudden there seems to be this expectation of considerably higher wages and a considerably better work environment for sure than there was before. It was like, look, I was able to work from home and I was able to get my work done and everyone just kept on making money, so I don't want to have to go back to the office. And if I do, I'm definitely going to want more pay. Or how about if I just stay home and start my own business, which is very popular right now, because there was a lot of investigation into how am I going to make money on my own when there was so much concern in the traditional economy and traditional workforce. So all of a sudden people say it's time to go back to work. I'm not going back to work for $14 an hour. I'm not going back to work for $18 an hour. Whatever. I want to have the wage that I want to have, or I'm not going back to work. So what you see is, and we all see this, I've been all over the United States in the past year, and there's signs everywhere. Hiring, now hiring, now hiring. I'll tell you where I live, if I want to go into a fast food restaurant to get some food, there is a good chance that I will pull on that door and the door is locked. We're not talking about, midnight. It might be 8 o'clock in the morning. It might be 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It might be prime time, 6 o'clock PM in the evening. And they just have a sign on the door that says, basically, we don't have enough employees. So we couldn't open today. And that's like regular, like this kind of thing. I think you're probably all experiencing that. So there is a massive demand for people to work. People won't work unless they get paid enough. Okay. So one of the things that also creates is supply chain issues. So now we have supply chain issues coming from China, supply chain issues. But once it gets here, we don't necessarily have the employees that want to do those jobs anymore, especially not for the pay that they used to get. So somebody might say, look, I'm not going to go swing a hammer for 15 bucks an hour. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to get up in the morning. I'm not going to go do this job anymore. And that's happening on a very large scale. So that creates a situation where employers, what is the one thing that traditionally employers do to incentivize people to come work for them? Pay them more, right? So all of a sudden, now the employers are saying, man, I used to be able to pay $15 an hour. Now I got to pay $20 an hour. Okay, well, you got to do what you got to do. We're going to pay $20 an hour. All right. So fast forward I mean, only a couple of months. And let's see what's going to happen. Everyone knows the answer. A Big Mac isn't $5 anymore. It's $6.50. A soda isn't $2 anymore. It's $2.50. A Snickers bar isn't $1 anymore. It's $1.50. That is inflation. Okay. So inflation created inflation, a spiral. So we made things more expensive. So people need to get paid more. And in order for you to get paid more, we need to raise the prices on our products. And that is inflation. So this happens over and over and over again. And that's what we're concerned with. So here comes the Federal Reserve. They're coming in, they're saying, hey, there's mass inflation. We need to do something about it. And the Federal Reserve, their two main functions is to have stable employment and to have stable inflation. And right now, inflation is way too high. They say we're at 7-8%. You and I probably both know we're probably in the 10 to 15%, maybe higher on certain products. But the Federal Reserve comes in and says, well, the way that we traditionally, again, I think the word traditionally seems to be the recurring theme that is the problem, because we need to think differently. So traditionally, the Federal Reserve comes out and says, we're going to raise interest rates. If we raise interest rates, that's going to slow things down. Okay. Basically, they're saying we're going to make things more expensive, and people will say, oh, well, I can't buy that anymore because that's become a little bit too expensive. So we pull back. Okay. Makes sense. So, but what if the Federal Reserve comes out and they raise interest rates? And when you raise interest rates, it really impacts businesses, because businesses deal in massive amounts of debt. Okay, we don't really realize that all the time. But when you see, Bank of America building a new bank, might not be the best example, but let's just say it's an obviously known name. Bank of America goes and builds this massive bank in downtown Los Angeles. They are probably not pulling out cash and paying for that. They're financing it. And anything that is financed is debt. Businesses live and die on debt. They're always moving money around. So the debt just became more expensive, which means that their operating expenses, their cost of doing business ultimately just went up in cost. Okay, so now you got a situation where your employees want more money. Now the federal government has raised the federal funds rate, which increases the prime rate, which increases interest rates in general. So it became more expensive for us to borrow money. So guess what we have to do? We need to raise the price of our product. So now again, they're raising the price of their product. Okay. So now all of a sudden, let's just say a Snickers bar is $3.50, and everyone, you got two choices. This is what we don't know. And this is what I'm curious to see. As inflation continues to rise, which force is going to win? They're opposing forces. And the force is, number one, people stop buying it, right? And that's what the Federal Reserve actually wants. They actually want people to pull back on spending, okay? Or here's the other thing. Maybe the spiral just continues. Maybe the employees say, no, I still want to buy that Snickers bar. So if you don't pay me more, I won't be here tomorrow. You're just not going to have anybody show up. And you can put another sign on the door that says, sorry, we can't serve tacos, hamburgers, and burritos today because no one showed up. And then what are they going to do? They're going to go out of business, or are they going to raise their prices? Spiral, spiral, spiral. So it's going to be very interesting to see, maybe a little bit of both. Hopefully we do have some sort of regulating of the inflation that we have right now in kind of a safe way. I honestly do not think it's going to happen, because I think the Federal Reserve is going to go too far, too quickly, and they're going to cause probably something much more difficult than what they should. They should change. They should increase the federal funds rate by 0.25%, which they just did, and wait 6 months. And then maybe look to raise it by 0.25% and then wait 6 months. Here's the other thing. We'll talk about inflation in greater detail at another time, but inflation was going to settle down on its own because stimulus was going to wear off. Inflation was going to settle down on its own because we weren't putting trillions of dollars out into the economy anymore. So there wasn't as much money to spend. Anyhow, inflation would have subsided a lot. I don't know if all the way, but federal funds rate increases, prices increase, and people say, well, I need to make more money to pay for things. And it's a spiral. So that is what inflation spiral is. You may start to hear about it. Just thought you might want to hear my opinion on it. And hope that's informational. Thanks. Have a good day.